is a dog? Where is she?
Stop calling her a dog.
Hey, don't. You're not her advocate.
Just don't call her that.
Guys, settle down.
Who unleashed you?
Andrew, nobody can never listen to you. You're so disrespectful.
To whom?
To everybody around you. Everybody around you.
To Lauren, you were disrespectful.
Like you're hitting like what you want to divorce her?
What? You want to divorce me?
The room froze the second Andre's voice cut through the air. "Where is the dog?" he shouted, mocking a woman who wasn't even there to defend herself. Gasps, whispers, and side-eyes hit instantly. Cameras kept rolling, but even production looked unsure whether to step in or let the chaos burn. The tell-all had already been tense, but this was the spark no one saw coming. You're watching TLC Drama Live. I'm Sabrina, and if you haven't yet, subscribe and drop your thoughts below, because what you're about to hear will test how far reality TV should go in the name of ratings. The insult landed hard. Lauren's jaw tightened. Alexei tried to keep it calm, but you could see the fury bubbling behind his eyes. The word wasn't only rude, it was dehumanizing. And for a split second, every cast member seemed to ask the same silent question: what line wouldn't Andre cross for attention? The host tried to rein him in, but Andre brushed it off like nothing. His tone, his smirk, the defiance, it was the same energy he's carried since day one. The kind of confidence that's equal parts charm and danger. Some call it blunt honesty, others see it as plain disrespect. As the tension built, Elizabeth sat there still, eyes wide, lips tight. She didn't defend him, she didn't scold him, she just froze, trapped between loyalty and embarrassment. You could see it all over her face. It's one thing when your partner argues, but another when they humiliate themselves, and you on national TV. Andre looked around, feeding off the silence. You could almost feel the control he gets from it. He wasn't arguing anymore, he was performing. Every glare, every insult, every refusal to back down was fuel for him. And while the rest of the cast shifted uncomfortably, he stood taller, like the chaos made him stronger. Lauren finally snapped. "Stop calling her that," she demanded. Alexei backed her up, trying to hold the line between confrontation and explosion. But Andre wasn't listening. He didn't want peace. He wanted dominance. In that moment, the tell-all stopped being about couples, marriages, or misunderstandings. It turned into a live case study on how ego corrodes connection. You could feel the fear in some faces, disgust in others, and a strange mix of fascination in viewers who couldn't look away. Andre might have thought he was winning, but the truth was the opposite. Every word he said chipped at his own image, making him look less like a man defending himself and more like someone desperate to control the narrative, no matter who he hurt. And as the cameras zoomed in on Elizabeth's face, something shifted in her eyes, a flash of realization she tried to bury under a polite half-smile. It was the kind of moment that says, "I know this isn't okay, but also, I don't know how to stop it." How did one comment ignite every buried resentment in that room? Lauren's voice broke through the chaos like a warning shot. She called Andre out again, sharper this time, and Alexei stepped in with that steady but dangerous calm he's known for. He wasn't yelling, but every word came with weight. "Don't talk about her like that," he said. The air went heavy. Cameras picked up the silence, the kind that feels longer than it is. You could see cast members shifting in their seats, trying to decide if they should speak or stay out of it. Then came the reaction that proved what this was really about. Andre didn't apologize. He smirked. He threw a half-laugh, like being called out for disrespect was beneath him. That tiny reaction said more than any speech could. He wasn't there to talk things out. He wanted control, and if that meant making others uncomfortable, so be it. Lauren's anger grew, not from the insult itself anymore, but from how normal it felt to everyone else. You could read it in her expression. She'd seen this pattern before, the way bullies test limits until silence becomes permission. That's why she couldn't let it slide. Alexei backed her again, trying to stay composed, but his voice cracked slightly when he said, "You don't talk about women like that." That wasn't a line for the cameras. That was instinct. Noga, the woman Andre insulted, wasn't even on stage yet, but her name already carried tension. Everyone knew their last encounter had gone bad. Even before she appeared, Andre was preloading hostility, setting the tone so when she did arrive, he'd already poisoned the room against her. That's how control works, through preemptive attack. When Noga finally entered, she kept her chin high, but her voice wavered. You could sense she was bracing herself, trying not to give him the satisfaction of seeing fear, but Andre didn't stop. He interrupted, mocked, told her she had 2 minutes. The rest of the cast turned away, faces tight, as if embarrassed to be part of it. It wasn't just confrontation anymore, it was degradation. Some stayed silent out of exhaustion. Others, out of fear that stepping in would make them his next target. That's what toxic dynamics do, they teach people that speaking up costs too much. You start calculating the fallout before you even open your mouth. And then came the host's voice trying to smooth things over, but it was too late. Andre had already made his point. He could insult, dismiss, and derail, and nothing, no rules, no peer pressure, no host intervention could stop him. It was his stage now. Through it all, Elizabeth sat frozen, eyes darting between her husband and the rest of the cast. Her breathing changed. Her shoulders stiffened. It was the body language of someone realizing she can't control the situation anymore. Every time he spoke, she looked smaller, like she wanted to disappear into the chair. Her silence wasn't agreement. It was self-protection. But in the audience's eyes, it read as complicity. And that's the tragedy of it. The first crack in her loyalty wasn't a shouted argument or a public defense. It was quiet panic hiding behind a practiced smile. Elizabeth kept her head still, her eyes fixed forward, but you could see her breathing change. The tension in her shoulders said everything she couldn't say out loud. Cameras caught her hand gripping the armrest, the tiniest tremor running through it. Everyone else was still arguing, but she wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was racing through something much quieter. How did it reach this point? Andre didn't look at her once. Not when she froze, not when she whispered that she was feeling dizzy. He stayed focused on the fight, still raising his voice, still arguing with anyone who dared challenge him. He didn't notice her panic, or maybe he did and chose to ignore it. Either way, he left her to deal with it alone. For anyone who's been in a relationship like that, it's a familiar scene. You learn to keep calm because reacting will only make things worse. You start defending them publicly because if you don't, you'll pay for it privately. It's not always abuse in the obvious sense. Sometimes it's subtler, a silence that punishes, a glare that warns. Loyalty turns into survival before you realize it's happening. Elizabeth had always been the one who held their image together. She softened his words, explained his temper, laughed off his insults as jokes. But now, in front of the whole cast, that mask cracked. When her voice finally broke and she said she couldn't breathe, Andre didn't move. He waved for someone else to check on her, like it was a distraction from the real show, his argument. That one moment showed the full imbalance of power between them. He had turned their marriage into a performance, and she was trapped playing the role of the calm, loyal wife no matter how bad it got. When Julia walked backstage to comfort her, Elizabeth tried to smile for the camera again, but her eyes betrayed her. You could see fear, embarrassment, and a strange kind of acceptance. She knew this wasn't new behavior. It was just the first time the world saw it as clearly as she did. And while Andre kept talking over people, acting like the victim, Elizabeth sat in the hallway catching her breath. She whispered that she needed space, but she didn't mean from the room, she meant from him. Was this the moment Elizabeth finally saw who she'd married? The room went silent again when Andre dropped the bomb. "You were the one who said you wanted to divorce her," he barked across the stage. For a split second, everyone froze, unsure if they heard right. Then the camera caught Yara's face, total disbelief. Her hand covered her mouth as she turned toward Jovi, waiting for him to deny it, but he didn't, not right away. The energy shifted fast. This wasn't gossip now, this was a public ambush. Andre had taken something private, something confessional, and hurled it into the spotlight like ammunition. You could feel the room tense up, half the cast staring at Yara, the other half staring at Jovi, and no one breathing. Jovi looked cornered, his face flushing red. He mumbled something about being drunk, about venting, about not meaning it. But the more he explained, the guiltier he looked. Every word made Yara's silence heavier. She wasn't crying yet, but her eyes were wet. You could tell she was trying not to break on camera. Andre leaned back in his chair, satisfied. It wasn't about truth anymore, it was about dominance. If his own marriage looked like a disaster, he'd make sure everyone else's did too. That's the pattern. Misery shared feels like control regained. And right now, Andre was enjoying the chaos he'd created. Elizabeth tried to calm him down, her voice low, pleading, but he brushed her off. He kept going, bringing up details he had no business repeating. The kind of late-night talk between friends that was never meant to see daylight. You could tell this wasn't about defending himself, it was revenge for being criticized. Jovi, usually the one cracking jokes, went quiet. He avoided Yara's eyes completely. The cameras zoomed in on her face, and you could see her walls coming down. The realization that her husband had discussed divorce, not once, but multiple times, with Andre of all people, hit her like a punch. She wasn't angry yet. She was stunned, Then the whispers started. Cast members shifted in their seats. Even the host looked caught between intervention and disbelief. It felt wrong, like something too personal had been forced into the open for entertainment. And that's what Andre wanted. He'd flipped the script from being the villain to making someone else the scandal. It's a move he's used before: distraction through exposure. When his behavior is questioned, he drags someone else down with him. In that instant, the tell-all wasn't about the show anymore. It became a competition for emotional survival. Every couple was suddenly guarding their secrets tighter. Every glance, every silence, every tense half-smile carried fear that they'd be next. Yara finally spoke, voice trembling. "You want to divorce me?" It wasn't a question for clarity, it was disbelief, pain, and humiliation all in one. Jovi muttered, "I said things I shouldn't have." The damage was already done. The audience didn't hear a man defending his marriage. They heard a man caught telling on himself. Did he tell the truth, or weaponize a friend's secret for revenge? Andre has always carried himself like the loudest man in the room. That energy looks like confidence to some, but underneath it sits a long pattern of control. The insults, the secrecy, the constant need to win, it's not random. It's a system that keeps everyone else off balance while he stays in charge. People remember the outbursts, but they forget the quieter red flags that built up over time. The way he interrupts Elizabeth mid-sentence. The way he shuts down any opinion that challenges his own. The way he insists he's protecting his family while making every choice without asking her. That's not partnership. That's management. Then came the money issue. The $75,000 he invested overseas without telling Elizabeth. He called it a business move. She called it what it was, a betrayal. That's not about finances, it's about trust. He didn't just hide money, he hid the decision itself. When your partner learns about a major loss from strangers before hearing it from you, it's not an accident. It's control through information. And then came Moldova, his dream, her dread. Andre framed it like a cultural return, a fresh start for their family. But every time Elizabeth said no, he turned colder. For him, no wasn't a boundary, it was a challenge. The more she resisted, the more determined he became to prove she'd come around eventually. It wasn't about moving anymore, it was about winning. At his best, Andre can be charming. That's what makes this cycle work. He can make you laugh, disarm you with humor, act like he's misunderstood. But that same charm turns sharp the second someone stops agreeing. The mask slips, and what's left is control disguised as passion. Every time someone tried to set a boundary, Andre treated it like betrayal, and the audience loved the chaos. That's the twisted truth of reality TV. The worse he behaved, the more people tuned in. Each season rewarded his aggression with screen time, giving him the attention he craved while making the damage look entertaining. And when viewers laughed, it blurred the line between villain and victim. Then came the blow no one expected. Chuck's death. Elizabeth's father wasn't just a family figure. He was the only one Andre seemed to respect. The one person who could challenge him without sparking a war. Chuck's calmness balanced out Andre's ego. Now that he's gone, that balance is gone too. The question isn't whether Andre will push harder, it's who's left to stop him. Yara sat quiet, eyes red but dry. The producers kept the cameras rolling, which somehow made it worse. You could tell she was holding herself together, not for Jovi, but for her daughter watching someday. The audience had seen her be strong before, but this time the strength looked more like exhaustion. After the show, during interviews, she admitted she'd spent years in therapy for body image issues. As a child, she was teased by her family for her looks, her weight, even her nose. So when Jovi mocked her old photos on camera, it didn't hit like casual teasing. It reopened something she thought she'd already healed. That's the cruel part about old wounds, they don't close when the world keeps reminding you of them. Fans online picked up on it fast. The tone shifted from gossip to empathy. People started calling out Jovi for joking about things that weren't jokes to her. The same fans who used to laugh at her diva moments now saw the pattern. She wasn't dramatic, she was defensive, it was survival disguised as sass. Jovi tried to apologize, but his timing made it hollow. His eye was drunk, excuse fell flat because it wasn't the first time he'd said it. When someone keeps using intoxication as an eraser, the apologies start sounding like rehearsals. The hardest part was that Yara still tried to protect him. She said he didn't mean to hurt her, that he was under stress, that they were working on communication. It was the kind of loyalty that confuses love with damage control. The audience could see it even if she couldn't. Being humiliated in private hurts. Being humiliated publicly, while millions watch, clip, and share, cuts in a different way. There's no space to recover. Every replay keeps the wound open. The cast might move on, but the internet doesn't forget. Yara wasn't just living through a breakup scare. She was living through it in real time while the world voted on who was right. And yet she kept showing up. She smiled for cameras, laughed in scenes she didn't feel like filming, and still defended her marriage. That's not weakness. That's someone trying to keep a life from collapsing in front of her child. But that night at the tell-all, when Andre exposed Jovi's words, you could see something shift. She wasn't angry. She was done. That's the difference. Anger means you still expect change. Being done means you've stopped believing it's possible. Would she stay for love or leave for peace? Backstage, the energy dropped from chaos to whisper. Lauren sat with Noga and Yara, all three of them processing the wreckage in silence before words started forming. It wasn't gossip anymore. It was recognition. Each of them had stood in front of a man who said the wrong thing and then made it their fault for reacting. Lauren broke the quiet first. She said what everyone was thinking, that the problem wasn't one fight, it was the cycle. The insults, the excuses, the pressure to keep smiling for the cameras because that's what people tune in for. Noga nodded, still shaken but steady. She admitted she'd rehearsed in her head what she'd say to Andre before walking on stage. But the moment she faced him, her body froze. She said she felt like she was back in that housewarming fight again, only this time the whole world was watching. Yara listened, quiet but alert. She didn't need to say much. Her expression said everything. The weight of protecting her husband's image while feeling unseen herself had worn her thin. Lauren placed a hand on her arm, the kind of small gesture that carries more support than words. They talked about the double bind they live in on these shows. If they stay silent, they're called weak. If they speak up, they're called dramatic. Either way, the edit wins. That's the trap, fame that rewards pain. The audience eats it up while the women carry the bruises of both the fight and the fame that follows it. It was calm, but the kind of calm that comes after too much noise. For a moment, they weren't cast members. They were women trying to figure out where the line between reality and survival had blurred. Lauren said it best when she muttered, "We all keep pretending it's normal, because if we stop, the cameras stop too." Then a voice came from down the hall. The stage manager called for everyone to return. The women looked at each other, took a breath, and went back to their places like soldiers heading into another round. When Elizabeth reappeared on stage, it was like the reset button had been hit. She looked composed again, the anxiety tucked behind a polished smile. The host tried to pivot to something lighter, but Elizabeth jumped straight into defending Andre. Her voice was steady but forceful, demanding an apology from Noga instead. The audience watching from home lost it. Social media lit up instantly, people screaming at their screens, "Why are you defending him?" It wasn't just frustration. It was heartbreak. Because after everything that had just happened backstage, Elizabeth had chosen the same silence in a louder form. She was back under the lights, fighting for a man who never fought for her. Elizabeth came back on stage like nothing had happened. Her breathing was steady again, her smile rehearsed, her voice calm. The same woman who'd whispered she couldn't breathe 15 minutes earlier was now standing tall, defending the very man who'd pushed her to that edge. She faced the group and demanded that Noga apologize to Andre. It sounded confident, but it wasn't conviction, it was survival instinct. The audience could feel the disconnect. Everyone knew she'd had a panic attack, yet here she was protecting him. That's how public gaslighting works. When someone convinces you the problem isn't what happened, but how you reacted, you start rewriting your own memory to make peace with it. Elizabeth wasn't lying to anyone but herself. Andre watched her speak with a small grin, the kind that says he's won the round. He didn't need to defend himself anymore because she was doing it for him. That's the subtle genius of control. It shifts the responsibility of reputation onto the person being controlled. Lauren shook her head from across the stage. Yara looked down. Even Jovi, who'd been under fire moments earlier, looked uncomfortable. Nobody wanted to argue with Elizabeth, not out of respect but pity. They'd seen this pattern before, and it always ends the same way, when love becomes duty, and duty becomes silence. The host tried to smooth it over, saying they'd agree to disagree, but the air was thick with something heavier than disagreement. You could feel the unease ripple through the set. Even the crew moved slower, like everyone was aware they were witnessing something more than a TV fight. Viewers weren't watching a marriage fight, they were watching a slow surrender live on camera. Social media blew up the second the episode aired. Fans called it uncomfortable to watch, saying it felt less like entertainment and more like a cry for help. Clips of Elizabeth defending Andre while visibly shaking went viral overnight. Comment sections filled with people debating whether TLC had gone too far by airing it. Behind the scenes, rumors started spreading that production was in damage control mode. Some said execs were worried the footage crossed ethical lines. Others claimed Andre and Elizabeth might be sidelined for future filming, not as punishment but as protection. On camera, Andre looked satisfied. Off camera, he looked cornered. The charm was gone. The crew said he refused interviews, stayed silent, and barely looked at Elizabeth once they left the set. She kept close to him, though, as if the safest place to hide was right beside the storm. The tension didn't end when the cameras stopped. It followed them into every room, every silence, every half-smile forced for damage control. By the end of the night, even the producers looked uncertain about what they'd captured, reality TV or the collapse of a marriage they couldn't edit their way out of. When the lights dimmed and the applause cue hit, the cast sat frozen, staring at nothing. The tell-all was over, but no one felt like it. The tension didn't end when the cameras stopped, it lingered, thick and stale, like the air after a storm. Producers moved quickly, pretending everything was fine, but you could see it in their faces. They knew what they'd filmed wasn't fun anymore. It was something darker. Reality TV has always lived on the edge between chaos and cruelty. The audience loves the meltdowns, the betrayals, the tears. The worse it gets, the higher the views climb. But at what point does entertainment turn into emotional damage disguised as content? The cast signs up for fame, but they don't sign up to lose themselves in it. That night blurred every boundary. Andre's anger wasn't a storyline anymore, it was a study in humiliation. Elizabeth's panic wasn't a plot twist, it was real. And Yara's heartbreak wasn't a ratings bump, it was public pain dressed as TV. The producers didn't have to script a thing because human collapse sells itself. You could feel the emotional exhaustion in every person on that stage. Lauren and Alexei left without saying goodbye. Yara walked past cameras with her eyes low. Even Jovi, usually unfazed, looked like a man replaying every mistake in his head. The irony is, the same network that created these conflicts now had to decide whether to clean them up or cash them in. Fans online were calling for accountability, hashtags trending overnight demanding TLC stop, rewarding toxicity. Yet those clips of Andre's outbursts were topping views on every platform. That's the loop, condemn it, clip it, share it, repeat. Andre and Elizabeth left separately that night. No post-show selfies, no closing hugs, no smiles for the cameras. They didn't even look at each other in the parking lot. Crew members whispered that they'd argued in private, voices raised, doors slammed. Whether it was about the show or each other didn't matter anymore. The damage had already been televised. Rumors started leaking that TLC might pull them from future seasons. Some insiders said the network was concerned about optics. Others said the decision had already been made after Elizabeth's panic episode aired. Either way, it was clear, the brand that built Andre was now deciding if it needed to protect itself from him. As the crew packed up, a few production assistants exchanged the same nervous thought. Maybe the show had gone too far this time. Because what aired that night wasn't just drama. It was the real cost of toxic fame, people breaking in slow motion while millions watched, replayed, and commented, turning human pain into clicks. When the noise finally stopped, the silence hit harder than the shouting ever did. Jovi and Yara sat on opposite ends of the hotel couch, their faces pale under the dim light. For once, there were no producers telling them what to say, no cameras chasing their reactions. They were alone with the mess the world had watched unfold. He tried to explain again, saying he'd been drunk, saying he never meant it. But she wasn't angry anymore, she was tired. The kind of tired that comes when your heart has been in defense mode for too long. She told him quietly that she didn't want to be strong all the time. That strength had become her shield, and she was tired of needing it. Jovi didn't argue, he just stared at the floor. The next morning, he promised to try again. To go to therapy with her, to listen, to be present. But Yara didn't answer. She only said, "We'll see." Not as a threat, but as a final reserve of hope she wasn't sure she still believed in. They left the room together, but it didn't look like unity. It looked like two people holding on to the last thread of something that used to be home. Across town, Elizabeth sat alone in her dressing room long after everyone else had gone. The crew lights were off, the chairs stacked. Her reflection stared back at her from the makeup mirror, eyes swollen, foundation cracked. She didn't cry this time, she just whispered that she wanted quiet. When Andre came to get her, she followed without a word. No one knows what they said on the way out, but she didn't look back. That's the part most people don't see. The moments after the chaos, when the adrenaline fades and the reality sets in. The show ends, but the emotions don't. Every season blurs the line between love and performance a little more. Every reunion turns someone's private pain into collective entertainment. Fame on these shows doesn't reward healing, it rewards destruction. The louder the meltdown, the longer the screen time. Vulnerability gets edited into weakness, while cruelty becomes charisma. It's a system built to feed on chaos, and the cast keeps giving it what it wants, because stepping back means disappearing. I'm Sabrina, and this was TLC Drama Live. What happened that night wasn't just another tell-all, it was a breaking point for almost everyone involved. And if you think this story ends here, you might want to hold that thought. Because word behind the scenes says the cameras caught something we weren't supposed to see, footage too raw for broadcast, now leaking from inside production itself. That's the next scandal waiting to explode. Stay tuned.